Hello, everybody, and welcome to the future! Or is it the past? Or the present? Well, whatever the case is, we are going to be talking about the cyberpunk shenanigans of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It's a set that's coming out this week, maybe even already on Arena as I post this video. It should be coming in paper in the following week, and we already seen the full set. So, what I'm going to use this Top Deck Thoughts video is to talk about my personal top 10 favorite cards of the set. Now, before we get started, a few little disclaimers. One, like I said, these are more my personal favorite cards of the set. That's not necessarily meaning they're the best cards in the set. Sometimes I like janky cards, sometimes I like cards that are very good, and sometimes I like cards that are just a bit of a, let's just say, a challenge to brew around. So just keep that in mind. Just because they're my personal favorite, it is a subjective opinion. I'm not necessarily meaning that these are quote-unquote the best cards of the set, so take that with a grain of salt. Also, another thing to note. While I would say my personal favorite cards, and some of them are going to be very, very good cards, I always like to provide this warning when I do my top 10 videos. Still be very cautious when crafting cards at the start of a new expansion. Honestly, I would just say open what you're playing to open from the new set, whether it's through pre-order or through just free packs and such, and then just start brewing around the cards you get from that, as well as limited events. Once, like, a few weeks pass and the meta kind of, like, stabilizes, then I would say it's safe to actually start crafting cards in the set that you think you're going to be playing within your preferred deck archetypes. Now, with that being said, let's actually get started with this list, shall we? Let's, go to the future.
Number 10.
Number 10 on this list, and I do think this is going to be one of the cards on the list that I still say that I would say it is definitely a card to keep an eye on for Standard as well as other formats. And that is the one Planeswalker that always comes at a weird time, but you always appreciate it when she's there, the Wandering Emperor. Or as we known her in previous sets, the Wanderer. Though, I have to admit, every time I hear this Planeswalker's name, I always think of the Fallout's pretty much that, I'm a wanderer, ba-dow, dow, dow. You can tell how much Fallout I played. But, that being said, the Wandering Emperor is a very powerful card. A 4-mana flash Planeswalker that has very relevant abilities, whether it can be used as semi-removal, as well as good token generation, as well as just buffing one of your creatures if you hold one of them for the defense, making it as a surprise combat trick. That's very good. For Standard itself, I think that's going to be its most primary strength. But once we get into older formats, you do actually have some fun little shenanigans you could do with the Wanderer. Which that is with any flicker spells. Like in Historic, we have Teferi's Time something. I always forget the name of it. But it's one of the rare spares where you can flicker a non-land permanent, aka a Planeswalker. So pretty much keep your eye on flicker spells like that. Because if you flicker the Wanderer with it, it was considered a new instant, and you can still activate her Planeswalker abilities at the instant speed as her ETB states. So there's definitely some silly shenanigans you can do there. But honestly, I just think this is going to be good for aggro decks. I think this is going to be a good one for control decks, obviously. But I do think there's definitely going to be some shenanigans that the Wanderer is going to provide. Like I said, you're never going to suspect it. Well, unless you're the type of person that always suspects when 4-mana hold up, you're going to have to prepare for a Settled Wreckage in Historic, but you get my point. Nevertheless, number 10 on the list, the Wanderer. Ba-da-da-da. And now that song's stuck in my head.
Number 9.
Number 9 on the list. It is one that will bring quite a good harmony. One could say it weaves it. One could say it's a panharmonicon of sorts. But it's the Weaver of Harmony. Just a really cool bear that we got from the set that is also an enchantment creature lord. That's very nifty for the upcoming Standard with all the enchantment creatures we're going to be getting, as well as in older formats, all the enchantment creatures that we currently have. Plus, there's also just the shenanigans you can do by making your enchantments into creatures with opalescence and stuff like that, or Starfield and Nits, so this lord can buff them up. But also what's really nifty is, of course, its activated ability, which is kind of like a Reigns of Brightheart, allowing you to double your enchantment-based effects. This is going to be very nifty, especially, for example, like, one of the more, like, smaller things you could do is, like, a card that barely made it onto the list, even though I do love a good doggo, is kind of like the Faithful Companion, which essentially is a card that is an enchantment creature, enters the battlefield. Just spend that 1 green by activating the Weaver of Harmony's ability, and you get to draw 2 cards. That's sweet. But there's also other little nifty tricks that you have to keep in mind, specifically landfall trigger enchantments. Stuff like, essentially, Felidar Retreat, as well as Valakut's Awakening. So don't sleep on those effects. But also another one that I think people are going to miss, control-based enchantments. Like, for example, our Banishing Lights in the set for this set is kind of like the Borrowed Time. So you can actually play Borrowed Time and then activate Weavers of Harmony's ability and exile 2 non-land permanents under the Borrowed Time. So don't miss that trick out. That trick is pretty nifty. And of course, there is also the fact that you can double the effect of sagas, which we already know the powerful sagas that are coming in from Neon Dynasty, as well as the sagas that are currently popular in Standard, and even the ones that are not popular. Maybe can be looked at a second glance due to the factor that we have the Weaver of Harmony to double the effects. So, obviously, number 9 on our list, it's going to bring quite an Enchanted Evening. No, actually, wait a minute. Enchanted Evening actually gives you Fiend's Shroud, so that would actually hurt Weaver of Harmony. Nevertheless, a little bit of messed up pun aside, my number 9th on the list is, of course, the Weaver of Harmony. Number 8 on the list is going to be a little bit of a cheat, but I feel like I had to at least include him in the list somehow. But it's pretty much sagas. Like, as you could probably tell with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, we actually have a new take on sagas, which is essentially the quote-unquote kind of like sagas that turn into a creature. And trust me, we got a lot of sagas. We got sagas at the common level, we got sagas at the uncommon level, we got sagas at rare, we got sagas at mythic. We got a lot of really cool sagas this time around. And I kind of wanted to include them on their list, but if I had to choose at least one saga that I actually liked on the top 10 list, it's honestly gotta be the restoration of forgive me if my pronunciation of this, but Igenjo? I think is how you pronounce that. Correct me in the comments if that was a wrong pronunciation. I apologize in advance. I do not know how to pronounce that. But the Restoration. Essentially, it's a free mana rare saga that has Step 1, search your library for a basic Plains card. You reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Step 2, which is the most important part, you may discard a card. When you do, return target permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So you can even do something cheeky as that Plains you pretty much fetched. You can actually discard that, return that Plains to the battlefield tapped, but also you can use this to just reanimate early game, like, value-injuring creatures or creatures that die due to combat and such. Like, there's a lot of nifty ways you can actually use the Restoration of a Django. And of course, once it gets to its 3rd step, it exiles and turns into the Architect of Restoration, a enchantment creature Fox Monk, a 3/4 with Vigilance that is nothing to sneeze at, as well as whenever it attacks with blocks, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. That is very good. Having essentially all these effects that's also attached to a 3/4 that you will get value if you block with it, as well as attack to get the tokens, that's very, very good. So yeah, overall, I love what this saga is bringing to the table for Standard. I do think it also has some fun shenanigans and egg-like decks in other formats, so keep your eye on the Restoration of a Django. I think I'm hopefully pronouncing that right, but nevertheless, I love this saga, and I love the creature that's on the backside of this saga, so it's going to do some shenanigans. Plus, we're not going to end talking about sagas, but we're going to have to wait a little bit later in the list before we talk about them again, so let's move on, shall we? Number 7 on the list, and it is one of the bad guys of the set, and that is Jin Gatatius, Progress Tyrant. What can I say? I like copy spells. Jin-Gatatia's is essentially a copy lord, being able to copy our artifact, instant, or sorcery spells once each turn. It semi-protects itself, which is also nice. Yes, I will admit that the factor that it can't protect itself against enchantment removal as well as planeswalker removal kind of puts it down a little bit. But overall, I like copy-like spell effects, and Jin-Gatatia's does copy a lot of stuff. Though, hey, Jin, come close. Come close. Just a little bit, right here. That is for completing Tamiyo, you metal piece of...
Number 6.
Number 6 on the list, and this one is kind of like first showing of the reconfigure mechanic, and I still think one of the more powerful reconfigure cards in the set, and of course it's legendary, the Reality Chip. A legendary equipment jellyfish. Okay, a little bit of a short story here, just contents here. One of the earlier Brewing Lab videos that I did was essentially a flump kind of like control list, and one of our intro skits is, what if we put a jellyfish with a buttload of equipment? Like, you can go see it, I'll probably link it down in the video below, just so you have the context there. So the factor that they decided to reveal what basically amounts to a legendary equipment jellyfish is... Future! I mean, it's kind of like both a combination of going full circle, as well as just funny to say, let me put it like that. But still, I do think this card is a very powerful card. Yes, at its base, it's just a 2-mana 0/4, which, not the most exciting thing in the world. Sure, the ability to look at the top card of your library. It's not exciting at first, but never underestimate that ability. Being able to predict what you're going to draw can help you essentially plan out your plays and such. Never underestimate the ability to look at the top card of your library. That is always a very strong ability. And of course, if we can get this reconfigured onto a creature of ours, then we essentially draw an extra card each turn. Or even draw more extra cards if we can play cards on the top of our library more consistently. Like, that is a very, very powerful effect. Like, already CEDH players have been already talking about shenanigans you can do with this as your commander, with artifact essentially discount spells as well as Sensei Divine Top. By the way, this is actually, Sensei's Top is one of the cards you can get in the set boosters from the list, so... that's cool. So the fact that people can have access to potentially trying this deck out, at least the CDH variation of it, is kind of pretty cool. But I do think this is also just going to be a nice card for sometimes control decks, as well as mid-range value decks that can consistently protect their Reality Chip and protect the creature that's going to be configured on it. And I think it is going to bring a buttload of value, which is very fitting since it does have a big butt. What can I say? High toughness creatures. They usually are pretty nifty, especially ones with some extra abilities, like this legendary equipment jellyfish. I'm never going to get over that, just for the record.
5.
Number 5 on the list, and a card that my editor is currently very anticipating for from the set, which is Nashi, Moon Mage's Scion. Now, overall, this is just a very good free drop that also can just be a 4-drop with a ninjutsu ability. It's just a good card, a very powerful legendary, also a powerful rat for your rat EDH shenanigans. But also, this is very fitting for... I know some people were kinda a little confused about the flavor of this card, since, for those who read the lore, Nashi is Tamiyo's adopted son. And it feels weird for it to Nashi, which looks like being more of a technical person, being a rat ninja. Though you probably will not interpret that if you look at the alternate art. Though, I'll make a slight little counter-argument that technically one thing we know about Nashi is that in the stories that he was able to sneak around and listen to the stories of people kind of like in his household and such, and that's actually one of the main plot points for one of the Aether Revolt storylines. I'll probably provide a link for that one because that's a fun story. So there is a little bit of flavor here of whenever he's able to deal combat damage, he gets a little bit of your story, aka the top of your deck, and be able to play it or act upon it. So, okay, is that a little bit of a stretch? a little bit, but still, I do think the fact that they gave this really cool character such a cool legendary creature card, it's really cool, not gonna lie. So, yeah, this is gonna do some shenanigans in Commander, but I can also see if Ninja decks can exist in Standard or Historic, that they are going to give this a shot, mostly just due to the fact that, hey, it's potentially free value. Sure, you're gonna have to pay a little bit of life for it, but free value, even at the cost of life, usually you are willing to pay that. I mean, heck, take a look at Phyrexian mana. Yes, we're gonna get to the Phyrexian mana theme shortly, but that's soon. Just a little bit soon, okay? Nevertheless, number 5 on the list, Nashi.
Number 4.
Number 4 on the list, and this is probably, if I have to state, one of the probably more powerful cards that are coming in Standard. Pretty much the whole Dragon cycle, though it is going to be a little bit awkward in the Standard since there was a lot of exile-based removal running around. But even then, I still think we do need to talk about what's my number 4 card on the list, which is Junji, the Midnight Sky. This card is just really silly. A 5-mana 5/5 Flying Menace, so a very big threat, no denying that. But also, when it dies, you can either Mind Rot your opponent, which, if you're playing this in Commander, you might rot everybody. So I could even definitely see this either as a main Commander or in the 99 in Turgid list. But also, oh hey, it also has a second ability that you can put a target non-dragon creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, and you just lose a little bit of life with that. I feel like this is just going to be a mainstay in any Orzhov midrange or Orzhov Reanimator Snow deck that we've been seeing, like Blood on Snow. Like, imagine Blood on Snow when Junji's on the battlefield, and then you use Blood on the Snow to return Junji, and then use Junji's Death Trigger to return any other value creature you have in the graveyard. Like, you better get your go, Brain Slatty, because if this card becomes popular enough, you might be incorporating more graveyard hate than you usually would. Still, nevertheless, even if we don't talk about its Reanimator aspect, you're still getting a 5-mana 5/5 Flying Menace Dragon, which blocks Goldspan Dragon very well, so you gotta keep that in mind. So, yeah. This number 4 on the list, it's Junji, because, yeah. I mean, look at the card. Look at the card. The card is silly. Next on the list, and this is probably one of the more funnier Brew Round cards that came from the set, but also can be a very powerful card. Number 3 on the list is Light Paws, Emperor's Voice. Now, for the record, before we talk about this, let's also talk about the alternate art of this, or the soft glow treatment. They did a really good job on that, because that alt art is really gorgeous, as well as just the regular art itself. Like, both of them are really good arts. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. But overall, I also just like this card because it's a fun, kind of like Brew Round card. So, pretty much this card, as you read it, pretty much you have to make your deck based around auras. And there's actually a lot of ways you can actually approach this. You can approach this in the realm of kind of like a Voltron method, where you, of course, just use, like, let's say, for example, the Kaldheim runes and such. Like, get one of your runes, and then essentially just more or less get another rune from your library, and then put it on Light Paws and such, and just make Light Paws into a big Voltron-y threat, essentially. So that's awesome. But you can also approach it in a different method. Like, let's say, for example, you're still going to have, like, your value-based kind of like auras and such. Like, here's one that's actually kind of silly, and you're actually going to use another card from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty to do this, but you can actually put this in kind of like an aura curse brew. Now, okay, for the record, it's already been stated that you can't tutor auras on this because there's no curses that can attach to creatures in the current standard. So don't be cheeky and think that you can cast one curse and get another curse onto your opponent. So you can't do that. However, you can do some tricks like, say, for example, get like a 5-cost curse and then tutor an aura onto your Light Paws that can still be renewable. Which we actually have one card that's like that in the set, weirdly enough. And that is, let me get the name of the card. I always forget the name of this card. Twisted Embrace. So, for example, since Twisted Embrace does enchant your creature, you can actually use this to essentially Play a 5-cost Aura, that's maybe a curse, and then use this to tutor Twisted Embrace, attach it to Light Pulse, and now Light Pulse is a removal spell, which, while still giving it a +1/+1 buff, which is kind of a cool interaction. Like, that's one of the niftier little interactions you can do, but there's also a lot of really cool ways to brew around this card, and I really love that aspect of it. Of course, a lot of EDH players have also been talking about fun ways to brew this in EDH, because it's a very powerful EDH card. Since EDH is a 1-of format, just being able to use this card to just get multiple auras out of your deck, that can lead to some silly shenanigans. Nevertheless, number 3 on the list, without a sweat, it's got to be Light Pulse, because, oh man, there's a lot of shenanigans of the aura variety that you can do with this card. So many shenanigans.
Number 2.
Number 2 on the list. Hey, Jin, come back here. Come back here. For the record, I am still mad at what you did to Tamio, but I will admit, card's good. That's a very powerful card. I'm still gonna punch you in the face. Okay. Nevertheless, number 2 on the list is Tamio Completed Sage. Now, a little context here. Tamio is one of my favorite Planeswalkers. Not my absolute favorite. Like, it's on the top 3. Like, Tamio's like number 3, with number 1 being Sahiri Ray, number 2 is Vraska. But still, it is one of my favorite Planeswalkers. And seeing her become this into the story is very, very sad. Like, I was like a little gut punch when we heard about this story. I mean, it's the reason why I've been doing the punch gag to Jin Katatsias over here, so yeah, I'm still a little mad at him for that. But I will admit, this is a really cool design card. Like, a 5-mana Planeswalker that's a 5 loyalty, but can also be played as a 4-mana loyalty Planeswalker if you pay the Phyrexian mana, aka you just pay life for it. That's really cool to... I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's kind of cool that they put Phyrexian mana into Planeswalkers? I can't believe I just said that. But anyway, what's kind of cool about it is the way how they designed this mechanic, where it now kind of like makes it where it's a modal Planeswalker where you either play it early or play it late for just maximum value and such. So you can play this on turn 4 and get this nifty activated abilities, or triggered abilities, I guess technically speaking, not activated, but triggered abilities, which is tapping a creature or an artifact, or my favorite part of the card, which is exile target non-land permanent card with a mana value X or less from a graveyard, your graveyard specifically, and then you create a token that's a copy of that card. Like I stated before, I like copy shenanigans, so the factor that we have Tamio being what basically amounts to a blue-green reanimator spell, that's cool! I'm not gonna lie, that's actually really cool. The +1 is also very nice to help keep good tempo, and also keep some problematic artifact and creatures offline, stuff like the Celestis, or even like in, maybe even the... I'm forgetting the name of it, Key to the Archive in Alchemy and such. So there's definitely some shenanigans. I mean, also there's the shenanigans you can do with the factor that you can make a token copy of now anything, which means that this can be easily played with Eska's Chariot, which actually is kind of sad when you consider the fate of Eska due to the factor of Vorinclet steering the World Tree Nectar, but... Wow, this is kind of a full circle thing, isn't it? Anyway, besides that, there is definitely the Eska Chariot shenanigans of making multiple copies of multiple type of permanents, like Planeswalkers, which is very nifty with stuff like Mirror Bots and such. Like, there's a lot of silly shenanigans you can do with that minus sets. And of course, if you can get to the ultimate is also very, very powerful. Like, being able to essentially get this artifact that discounts your spells, as well as draws you an additional card each turn. That is ridiculously absurd. It's safe to say that even though I am still mad at Tamio's fate and I'm still sad, I can't deny that I still love the design of this card. I'm kind of like a glass case of emotions here. I'm sad about the lore, I am sad about the fate of Tamio, but the designer brewer part of my brain is looking at this and legitimately liking the design. So I'm a little bit torn. A little bit mixed, I guess is the phrase, but still, that still doesn't change the fact that Tamio Completed Sage is my number 2 card on the list. Plus, also the borderless art on it is freaking gorgeous. Terrifying, but gorgeous, nevertheless.
Number 1.
And number 1 on my list of my top 10 favorite cards of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. People who've been following me on Twitter probably can guess what's coming up, but my number 1 favorite card is Satsuke, the Living War. Personally, I just love this card as a commander. Look, I know that many people were hoping for like a Rainbow Saga commander, or they were hoping for like maybe a 3-4 color commander that did the Saga shenanigans, but personally, I do think this is a kind of a cool design that they go with strictly to the Selesnya to do this ability. Plus, just the abilities itself are very powerful. Being able to put a lore counter on each saga you control, just being able to accelerate your sagas, that's very powerful. Also, just being able to, whenever this dies, being able to return a target saga or enchantment to your hand if you want to, like, repeat its value and such, or be able to get one from your graveyard to your hand, that's very valuable too. Now, I know a lot of people, when they were looking at this card, they kind of were not really impressed by it due to the factor that it is just Selesnya, and the factor that, oh, you're just mostly just restricted to playing sagas and such. And I don't know, is that good? Or shouldn't you just do like an Enchantress commander like Cephas or something like that? Or Siphus, I think it's the proper name, but... And I agree with that to an extent, but here's my counter-argument. The reason why I like Satsuke is kind of like the same reason why I like General Tazri Beacon of Unity from Zendikar Rising. It looks like a one-note commander, and the fun thing about the challenge of that is actually breaking the expectations. Like, when you look at General Tazri, you mostly look at it, the Tazri Beacon of Unity, you think of, oh, it's just going to be the party deck. You get all the party members and such. But many people who have played for me for EDH throughout the years know that I kind of evolved the deck and making it less more of the party-based shenanigans, and more just like a rainbow token list. I like the factor that, you have this angle of going to the party shenanigans, but it is one of those that you can actually tweak it to your own kind of like play archetype, or maybe do some arrangements and surprise your opponents with some things that they weren't suspecting, but still have the party-based mechanic as just like a backup support, so to speak. And that's the same reason I'm looking at Satsuke. It's just going to be a fun Selesnya commander that there's many ways that you can actually brew around this, and just use the sagas as a good back support for it. Is it the most powerful Selesnya commander ever? Absolutely not. But I still love the design. I love the art, both on the alternate as well as Ryan Pintaco's original art. Both of them are just extremely gorgeous. I can't wait to play this in Commander and just try to figure out a way to brew around it, and even iterate on it once we get more sagas throughout future Magic expansions, as well as just some fun cards that synergize with enchantments and such. So, nevertheless, my number 1 favorite card of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty is Satsuke, the Living Lore. And that is my top 10 favorite cards from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. What are your personal favorites? If you want to, you can comment down below. I'll keep track of the comments. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And keep up with future videos. Some of them are going to be top deck thoughts, as well as just brewing deck videos, brewing around the new set. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed this video. And one more thing. Jin, come here one more time. I'm so mad you had Tamio, and I gave you a punch for both of them. But I swear, if you complete either Sahiri or Vraska, or either other of my top 10 favorite planeswalkers, just be prepared, is what I'm just going to be saying, okay? You have a good day. Yeah, you're fleshling, kind of like excuse, yeah, I'm a fleshling, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Nevertheless, hope you all have a good day. Not you, but everybody else. See y'all later. Bye.